Bonnie Hancock, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
I'm very privileged because today would be the first person that I've had on the podcast where it's not a financial background.
No, absolutely not. I'm sure I can learn a few things in that area as well. But excited for the chat.
And I'm excited because I'm really keen to know a little bit about you, but also for the listeners to know about you because what you've achieved is completely remarkable.
Thank you.
Go into the mindset of, how, why, and the darkness of some things. And also at the same time in terms of, we'll kind of bring it back to maybe a little bit of money here and there.
Yeah, totally.
But tell me about you. And I know for those who are listening, obviously, you're a professional ironwoman.
Yes, yep.
And you did that by the age of 17.
I did, yes. I grew up in the tiny little town of Sawtell on the coast of New South Wales, so a couple of hours south of the Gold Coast. Did nippers from the age of 5, so we lived a couple of 100 metres from the beach. I've got 3 sisters. Our mum and dad just wanted us to be safe in the ocean, so we were put into the surf club, and I remember from the age of 12 wanting to be a professional ironwoman. It was the golden era of surf life saving. So Carla Gilbert was the top competitor. Some people remember her, and Trevor Hendy, Guy Leach, all of those. And I just wanted to be Carla. And at the age of 17, I moved to the Gold Coast with my sister, and we made the Professional Ironwoman series. So that was where it started.
Does it run in the family with your dad or your mum?
So mum growing up was a surfer. Dad was a marathon runner, actually, but he grew up in Tassie, so a little bit of surf club down there. But it was more so our proximity to the beach. It was being so close to the beach where we were living. They just wanted us to be safe. But my older sister, Courtney, she's 18 months older, she was a professional ironwoman as well. So we both followed that path.
And how often did you spend at the beach?
Every day. I remember after school, every day I could not wait to just get in the ocean, and everyone's sort of got their happy place, right? That's my happy place and has been since I was 5 years old. So yeah, I would just run down there after school, jump on my board and go out in the ocean, and still to this day, I just love it so much. It's the best.
The reason why I keep asking is because for the listeners that don't know, you travelling 12,700 kilometres around Australia on a wakeboard?
It was on a
surfboard.
So a surf ski is an 8-kilogram carbon fibre craft, very similar to a kayak, built to go through waves and wind and swells, but very small compared to the big crocodiles that weigh about a tonne, I will say. So, yes, it's
which we'll get to, which I'm so super excited about.
Yeah.
So you moved to the Gold Coast.
Yes.
And that's where, obviously you took off, right?
Yeah, so Northcliffe Surf Club is still the number 1 club in the world, really, when it comes to surf sports. The Gold Coast is really the hub of surf life saving. So it's very hard to do it from Coffs Harbour. Maybe you can, but you either go north or south to Sydney. And yeah, I was lucky enough to make it in my first year of trying and training 3 times a day in like a boot camp style. And you've got to go through a grueling trial to get in, and the top best 20 girls, 20 boys get in that series.
If you go to, I'd imagine like other sports, I don't think it would be so glamorous in terms of, signing a professional contract and, earning 3, 4, 500,000 initially. How did you go about, obviously, accumulating that? Was it sponsors? Did you just have to talk to people? How does that work?
It's such a good point. So to give context how far surf life saving's gone backwards too, because in the 90s, they were winning, $25,000 for the Coolangatta Gold. It's the same these days.
Still.
Same. You win $25,000, right? You can pair that inflation, whatever.
Yeah, CPI doesn't account
right,
for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So nowadays, for the big wins, it's around $25,000. When I was coming through, it was $3,000. So you do the sport for the love of it. You can make a bit of money through sponsorship. It basically boomed in the 90s, went backwards, and it's starting to gain momentum again. But it was incredibly difficult.
Did you have a part-time job?
I did. I waitressed. I waitressed on my feet through uni, so I couldn't really get a full-time job whilst I was studying nutrition dietetics at uni. So I would train, I would waitress, I would go to uni, I would come back and train in the afternoon.
What did your day consist of?
Yeah,
and we're going to build up to that resilience part, right?
Yeah, totally. So in the morning we swim in the pool. It's about 6.5 kilometres.
What time?
So normally it's a 5:30 sort of session there. big grueling session in the pool. You've got the Olympian swimmers in one lane, triathletes, and then the surf lifesavers. And we swam under Dennis Cottrell, so one of the hardest coaches really in the history of swimming. So we do that. I would then probably go to uni for a few hours. Then if I had time, a waitressing shift, come back, do
a bit of a kip. Did you have a kip?
Oh, yeah, look, it was a pretty packed day, if I'm going to be pretty honest with you. I had to take the work when it was there, so I was working most days. And then in the afternoon, we do a big craft session, so probably maybe 10 to 20 kilometres on the craft, running in the soft sand. We would probably go to the gym after that as well. And then that's the day, get the food in between that and protein.
What time did you go to sleep?
Oh, gosh, I'm thinking back. We'd probably get out of the gym at maybe 7 o'clock or so from what I remember.
Relax,
so
go again the next day.
It was absolutely. So we're training 6 days a week. We did get Sundays off, but we were competing many of the weekends throughout the year as well. So if you're competing that weekend, you're back into it on Monday. So it's absolutely grueling, and probably the closest sport I can think to is triathlon in terms of managing all those different disciplines. You've got to be good at the board, swim, ski and run, and if you have a weak leg, it comes out.
For how long did you do that for?
So I did that from the age of 17 to 25, so it was really 8 years as a professional
And you did that
woman.
8 years, literally 6 days a week. Okay, you would have had Easter and Christmas, but that was it.
Absolutely.
Of living like that.
But ironically, our main racing season is over summer, so we don't really get a Christmas break. I remember training on Christmas, and your off season is essentially May through to about July. So it's a couple of months of the year, but then you're training for the Coolangatta Gold. So it's really unique in that way of, I guess, doing what's the Coolangatta Gold 42K and then coming down to do a 10-minute Ironwoman, and then maybe you've got another Ironwoman that's 20K, like all these different distances through the year. It's really unique.
What would a Bonnie say now, the age you are, to a young Bonnie then?
Yeah, I think just enjoy the process, and you're going to make so many mistakes, and you won't be good on the ski until your mid-20s because you simply don't have the strength at the age of 17. So don't get frustrated when you can't keep up on the ski. It's going to be your strongest leg at the end of the day. It's going to lead you down a path that you never saw coming. So
you would say take your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Methodically, right?
100%.
And at what stage did you, so you did that for 6 years?
So it was about 8 years as an Ironwoman, and then I switched to the specialist ski paddling. So
and that is?
I wanted a new challenge. So ski paddling is more like a 5-minute race distance. It's on that 18-kilogram craft. So it's different to an ocean ski, which I paddled around Australia, which we'll get into. That's 8 kilo. This is an 18-kilo craft. You've got to be very strong to paddle it, carry it, and maneuver it. And it was always my weak leg. So I wanted a new challenge.
So you wanted the challenge.
I did.
And did your sister still sustain the same path, or did she?
No, she is one of the best Iron women in history. She kept doing the Iron Woman series, only retired last year. So, she had so much success as an Iron Woman, and it was so amazing to, travel and do that series with her. But I just I'd started full-time work as a dietitian. It was very hard to maintain the Iron Woman training, and I was just at that stage where I was looking for a new challenge. So I took a different path in these ski races. The
girls that you used to train with when you were younger, do you still keep in contact with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So many of them are still on the Gold Coast. It's incredible. I often run into them. They'll be still active and out and jogging. I'll be walking the dog and whatnot. I'm the oldest woman competing at the moment, nearly 35. But the girls a couple of years younger than me. I mean, I grew up racing them. So at these carnivals, you see a lot of the girls in a coaching capacity or as parents of the nippers just still very much with those ties.
Do you find some of the girls that you trained with younger were somewhat maybe talented, a little bit more talented you in areas?
Absolutely. And when I talk at schools and to kids, I say work ethic and adaptability, I think, are some of the two key traits in life, finance, as an athlete in general. I was never a naturally talented athlete, to be honest.
What was your weakest? What was your strength?
My strength was definitely just that work ethic and staying out there in the water longer than anyone else.
Did it come from? Sorry, keep going.
I knew that I needed to do that. I wasn't physically strong. A lot of the girls are 6'3", tall, broad, naturally really strong. I was always finely built and weaker. And now I'm not. It's my strength is my strength. But as a 17-year-old, I was the youngest in the series for 2 or 3 years. I was young. I was weak. I had to get fast, become agile. I had to work on flexibility, all of these things until I built that strength. That ended up being an amazing thing because I had to build up
100%.
these other strengths, I guess. And when my strength did kick in sort of in my mid-20s, I had all of these other assets I could lean on too.
So your weakness became your strength.
Absolutely. So, with the ski paddling, it was always a lot of the reason I would lose races is this ski leg. It was so frustrating. You know, I would be leading races. I would lose them because the ski. When I switched to ski paddling, I had better results in one season than I'd ever had across my whole Ironwoman career.
Why is that? Just because
I had found a strength. Yeah. I found a new love for it. I was older. We were talking about emotional maturity of there, and I had that.
Where did your work ethic come from? Your dad, your mum, combined?
I think both. I also think growing up in a country town, we didn't have a whole lot of money. We had to get in the car and drive to Sydney pretty much every weekend because the main races are in Sydney. They're not a couple of hours up the road in Queensland. If you're in New South Wales, you're racing in Surf Life Saving New South Wales, driving to Sydney every weekend. I never put together when we were younger that we didn't, families were going on big holidays, fancy holidays. We never did that because we couldn't afford it. Every penny went towards our sport. And it's only when you get older you sort of realise that.
You see it a lot now, right? Like with parents, there's a lot that goes into sport for these kids, right? And it's expensive. My daughter does dancing. It's not cheap. But then you see it with soccer. And it must be it's a very, very expensive for the sacrifices that families actually give up for their kids, right? Absolutely. You don't see it until you're a little bit older.
You don't see it, and even the driving to and from training and all sorts of things like that. Exactly, and I was so blessed as well to have some incredible coaches. Terry DeCarl, our grassroots coach at Sawtell, would take us 3 times a week, totally voluntary, stand there in the pouring rain, coaching us, passing on his wisdom. Coaches that you're blessed to have that set you up for your professional years later on. They're your first mentors, really. Also
life as well, right? They teach you so much in life.
Absolutely.
So if you look at, say, your upbringing, your love for the ocean, your weakness became your strength.
Yeah.
I really, I'm sure a lot of people listening now really want to deep dive into the mammoth achievement of what you achieved.
Yeah.
Before we get there, at what stage did you go, I'm actually going to paddle around Australia?
Never ever grew up even wanting to dabble in ultra endurance. Had never heard of the woman who paddled around Australia. Mid-COVID 2020, the world shut down, as we all remember. The library was one of the first things to open up. It was, everything was closed, from restaurants to the shops to cafes. And the library opened and I went in there. I love reading. And I picked up the book about the woman who paddled around Australia. Her name's Freya. I read that book, closed it. I was like, that is the coolest story I've ever heard. And how did I not know about this? And that's when I decided I was going to paddle around Australia. Broadbeach Library.
No way.
Broadbeach Library. Yeah. The coolest thing is my book, my memoir, is in that library now. Yeah. I did a talk there. I'd never ever thought of the idea before reading, and I know we can all relate to that spark of inspiration that can come from hearing something or reading a story. That was it.
What did your parents say when you floated the
They were
idea?
very scared of the crocodiles. I think my family was just couldn't get their head around how that would work, which is so fair. And we're not from North Queensland or the Northern Territory if you don't have an idea. It's such a foreign concept. So they were pretty quiet at first and then supportive.
So around COVID, how long did it take to then go, well, I'm about to set off day one?
Totally. So it was about 12 months of preparation. And in that 12 months, it was talking to fishermen, marine biologists, skippers, super yacht captains, raising what was supposed to be $250,000 was
what'd it go to?
$100,000 and taking off with less than half the money to get around,
How many people shut the door in your face saying, nah, stupid idea?
I got 25 rejections before I got a yes. And that was the life-changing yes, because it was Shaw and Partners Financial Services who came on board as the big fish sponsor, the naming rights sponsor. They gave us, I think it was 50 to start. They helped us later on significantly when we got to WA and lost our catamaran because they had to go back to Queensland. We ran out of money. So they came on board again.
No
That's
way.
all you need is that person in your corner. That's
Just
it.
to
You
back
just
you.
need that one yes.
You do.
That one yes, and then that gave us credibility. We could build from there.
And how long were you on the ocean for?
8 months and 10 days it took me to paddle around Australia.
Which is 250.
254 days. The record was 10 and a half months prior. I knew I was never going to do it again. Logistics, everything. So it was so motivating to go, this is my chance. This is it. I'm going for it, you know.
What did you think the first day?
What have I gotten myself into?
Did you sleep the night before?
I've bitten off more than honestly, we were so excited. I can't even remember the lead up. I remember though that day of leaving, going out, sitting in my ski, and I couldn't touch the pedals because the leg length was too long. So with these skis, they're adjustable. You adjust the leg length back and forth. Now, this was a brand new ski. I was so excited and nervous, I didn't check the leg length. So I got into this ski. If anyone's played a sport where you use equipment, you know.
The wrong size boots.
Exactly. It's like putting shoes on and just slipping out of them. So I'm trying to balance in this ski. I can't steer. And I've got the TV crews on camera, on the shore, capturing. And I was like, what am I doing? I am so not prepared for this. I paddled 73K on the first day. Could not speak, could not move, laying on the back
Legs
deck.
were
Absolutely everything.
fatigued.
And I was like, this is day one. And I'm supposed to paddle 80 to 100K every day.
And you only got to 70.
I got to 73.
Huh.
Yeah. Day two was 80. It was even worse. And I had bulging discs in my back from a month in.
Did you have a coach? So you obviously would have had someone coaching you through.
I coached myself.
You did it all on your own.
I coached myself. I would say it was a collaborative effort with the skipper because with paddling around Australia, logistically, the biggest thing is this catamaran and where they're going to anchor. You need to find a safe bay. If the wind's coming from a certain direction, what was supposed to be a 70K paddle becomes 90. So he would say, even I'll tell you a more extreme example. One day I was supposed to paddle 90K, right? That's a pretty big chunk. We probably paddle around the distance of running. So it's like running 90K. He came out halfway through the day and said, that island is no longer safe. You've got to paddle 120. So added 30 kilometres on to my distance.
And that was the second day or just another day?
This was about a week and a half in. And
so each day?
Yeah.
Did you say the first day was 72?
Yep.
Second day was 90?
80. And then it built to 90 from a week in. I was paddling 100K plus.
And then that day that he told you to keep going an extra 20 or 30K?
Yeah.
What did you think? What was your first thought? Just your first thought. What did you say?
This is
you can swear a little bit.
Yeah, it probably was. What the fuck? And then it was, if I paddle an extra 30, like genuinely I remember this, I was like, if I paddle an extra 30K, that's 30 less I've got to do somewhere. So every time that would happen, and this is where adaptability comes in, it was like, okay, this is an extra 30K, but what is the silver lining? What's the plus, the pro in this? It's 30K less I've got to do. And every time he would come out and add 10, 40K, 15K on, I would tell myself that I'm paddling around Australia, I'm chasing a world record. If I can just keep doing what he's asking me to do, I'm making progress on the record. And that buffer became 1 week, 2 weeks. By the time I got to Western Australia, I was a month and a half ahead of the world record. And all of those little extra bits of distance helped with that. So even though you
did it bit by bit.
Absolutely. And the hard work here pays off down the track. And you might not see at the time, you've got your head in the hole, you're working so hard, something doesn't work out, you've got to do it a different way. But you're like, oh my gosh, right, that was supposed to happen because now this is here.
What was the lesson? Because I'm a big believer, you're probably similar, things happen for a reason, not just by coincidence, right?
Yeah.
You believe that?
Absolutely.
What was the lesson in some of those challenges, you think, looking back, retrospect?
Yeah, it was to be prepared to adapt your plan, because in paddling around Australia, the forecast can say you've got a 20-knot tailwind behind you. Fantastic, like sun's out, beautiful on the forecast. You get there, it's pouring rain. It's a 15-knot headwind. So if anyone's ever run or cycled or swum or just know what a headwind feels like, that is not what we want as paddlers. We want a tailwind to assist us. So I've got bulging discs, I'm pushing into a headwind. But what would happen in that time is I would get stronger. So it was conditioning me. Every time a headwind came, I was getting stronger. I didn't realize it. When the flat came and the tailwinds, I was paddling so much quicker because of those headwinds. So it's like anything, those headwinds come, they strengthen you in some way or other. That was it for me. So it was to be prepared to adapt and know that the headwinds were only temporary too. That's another thing we told ourselves.
Did you get up every day and just have the same mindset every day? Or was it, did you get up going, okay, well, I'm just going to give my utter best today. I'm going to think a certain pattern. Like, did you have a thought process throughout the day that you would go into?
It was, so we would sort of go through our meeting so the first thing was, okay, let's not think too far ahead. First of all, we're going to see what Mother Nature's thrown up. We would have a meeting at the end of each day, set a plan, but that morning we would see what actually the conditions were like. It was then chatting with the skipper and trusting my team. I cannot tell you the importance of trust, having trust in those around you, and I know everyone can relate to that. It was right. Bonnie, your job is to paddle 100 kilometres today. We're going to have a really tough time with the sails trying to match the boat to your speed, but we're going to do our best. We're going to rotate in this roster system, someone on the helm, someone on that's driving, someone on the sails, someone always on Bonnie watch watching me. We'd set out, 2 of the crew would go down with seasickness. Okay, then that whole plan changes.
How many of the crew did you have?
There was 5. So then we were down to 3. So 2 down with seasickness, that was supposed to be videoing me. So someone else would have to pick up the camera. The 18-year-old would have to step up and cook. He'd never cooked before, he'd just come out of home. He does now.
What was he doing on there, the 18-year-old? Just filming?
So there was some marine biology students that came on to help. They helped film, they helped sail, they were incredible. And my job was to paddle. Through the day, that plan, as I said, would often go out the window, whatever was said at the start of the day. So it was just this process of, okay, we'll set this plan, then shit would hit the fan, and then everyone's got to adapt.
Were you good at adapting prior?
No.
So you learnt that?
We, as an Iron Woman, have a 15-minute race. It's always the same course. Yes, the order changes if it's board, swim, ski, swim, board, but you don't need to adapt anywhere near what you do need to do in ultra endurance. Yes, you're reading the ocean, etc., but it's always the same set course, right? For anyone who's done sport, 100-meter swim, or run, or whatever it might be, it's the same course, so you have that in your mind. Ultra endurance, it could be 120K, 90K, 140K some days.
I've got a friend of mine who's a solicitor that we use, Richard Thompson. I'm not quite sure if you know of the name. He won Mr. Hawaii.
Gotcha.
And he spoke, we had him recently at one of our team events, and I was just mesmerised with, his obviously his path, but he spoke a lot about the team
Yeah, absolutely.
Playing team sport myself, it's critical, right, to success.
Absolutely.
What stood out for your team?
Just how they were willing to go above and beyond. So I'll give you an example. We were 500 kilometres out to sea across the Great Australian Bight. That's no land for 2 weeks. And I lost my ski. It detached from my leg leash broke, basically. Without hesitating, one of my crew jumped in and started swimming after that ski. That's great white shark territory out there. It's killer whale territory. He was straight in that water. It's 3 degrees ambient. It's 10 degrees in the water.
Didn't think, just jumped.
Jumped and grabbed the ski. He did that multiple times throughout the trip.
Did you know him prior?
No, I met him 2 weeks prior. And to do that, that just sums it up. And I would say to this crew, you can leave whenever you want. You're not obligated to stay. We could promise them a trip of the lifetime. They were there volunteering. We were very open about that. And they said, we're here. This is epic. They're like, this is the coolest thing we've ever done. We're not going anywhere.
Was it the experience? And then they obviously started to believe in you.
Absolutely.
So it was the experience first and then it was all about Bonnie, right?
You saw that change in them too.
At what stage did you see that change?
The crossing, I think, of the Great Australian Bight is where I saw my crew step up, grow as people. I mean, no one showered for 2 weeks across there.
No way.
No showers for 2 weeks. And that's something I often forget to tell. So our water desalinator broke. That means we had to conserve water like
Toilet?
Nothing. You could go to the toilet, but it was very limited with what you could flush. No showers. I would get a bucket bath at the end of each day. That's 1 bucket of water over my head.
Even though you're in the ocean?
Yeah.
How much water did you consume throughout the day?
I would have been consuming maybe 6 or 7 litres of water. In the Northern Territory, when it was 32 degrees in the water, 45 degrees ambient, maybe 8 litres more. To try and keep my body temperature cool. They were feeding me ice blocks. We were trying all sorts of things. So it's searing heat at the top, freezing cold down the bottom. It's
Did you find that
crazy.
The team fought? Not fought.
Yeah.
There was moments of just
Absolutely.
that. And
Absolutely.
I like that because you really see people's personalities, right?
There was one time someone didn't do the dishes and it was supposed to be their turn to do the dishes.
Something so small.
Absolutely. I saw these 2 guys like in a verbal argument, calling each other all sorts of things.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
So I thought, right, I've got to step in here because I had to become a leader on this trip, not just a paddler. And that was how I grew as a person too. I had to lead an all-male crew on that boat because the skipper was leading, I guess, the practical, logistical sense. But I had it was my project. So I had to manage people, which is something I'd never done. I remember pulling these guys both aside and reminding them that we were all there for the same reason. We all had the same end goal. And yes, we'll have disagreements and all sorts of things, and they fought like brothers. But at the end of the day, we were all wanting to get back to the Gold Coast safe, see our loved ones again, and it sort of pulled them back on the right track. But it was really hard.
It would have been.
It was tricky.
And when, like the dark moments, like for yourself and also your crew, but if I could just talk about yourself.
Yeah.
What did Bonnie learn about Bonnie?
So absolutely. There was a certain day, and I remember saying to my crewmate, I just feel like passing the baton on. I was like, I've got nothing left. I feel like every day I was paddling 120, 30, 40K some days, not being able to speak to my crew because it was too dangerous. The cat couldn't get near me. And I started feeling really sorry for myself. And then that crewmate turned to me and he said, every day I look at you in that water and I am so jealous of the fact that you get that freedom. He was a surfer. He said, I'm stuck on this boat. I just want to get in the ocean. There's no privacy. I can't get away from anything. And so you learn that the grass isn't always greener, all that perspective. And selfishly, I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't asked him how he was doing. He was missing his friends and family, and it was scary for him watching sharks tail me. And
how long were the sharks tailing you for?
So pretty much from day one, there were sharks following me.
Every day?
There. Most days they'd see sharks, because the thing was they were up elevated out of the water on this catamaran. Now, sharks are attracted to the vibration of the rudder. So there's, at first it's bull sharks and hammerhead. He saw a great white come up next to my ski in WA. I saw the most enormous bronze whaler in the Northern Territory, the size of a great white, like 100 metres ahead, leap out of the water. And for 2K, I'm like, that thing's in the water with
my
me.
God.
There was multiple shark sightings, most days, I'd say. Crocodiles up north, they saw 3 near me with torches at night time. And I hadn't stopped to consider that. I was just so caught up in what I was doing. So it taught me to look at your team and know that everyone is playing their role and doing their best, and we were all in it together. So, yeah.
What makes a good leader then? So in those moments of darkness for you, and like essentially it was about you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we've never met, but that comment that you just made then was when you were in the darkness, you thought about others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I'm so glad that you succeeded, because you just mentioned that. But what makes a good leader when you were dark in those times of, I've got to give up, I want to pass the baton?
Perspective, I think, as well. Communication, talking to others, delegating. Delegation is
the key.
Absolute key, because I don't know how to fill sails or what sail we should put up at a certain time. The skipper does and the crew does. I don't know how to steer a boat. I don't know how to work these really fancy cameras. But if we all do our job and I get in the water, even if I do not feel like paddling, and I paddle, and that guy with the camera who can't think of anything worse than filming on that day picks that camera up, and the skipper goes to his charts, even though he's not feeling like it, and does that, we break a world record. We break it by 2.5 months. At the end, we create a documentary that is on Fox and KO, and a book that was done by HarperCollins.
So people can find this at YouTube as well?
Yeah.
When
YouTube.
was it put up?
So it's under Bonnie Hancock. So it was December 2021 to August 2022. We were posting live as we went. The crew was filming, vomiting over the side of the boat and then picking that camera up. If we all don't do that because we don't feel like it, it doesn't happen. So even on days you don't feel like it, you get the job done together.
When did you, when you started in the morning, when did you finish at night?
So every day was so weather dependent. So I'll give you an example. There was a day where it looked like it was going to be amazing conditions to paddle. It totally swung back the other way. I started paddling for a couple of hours. The skipper had to call it and I had to come out. So as good as I felt when it turned to 25 to 30 knot headwinds, I couldn't paddle. So that would be like a write-off day. On another day, I might paddle for 18 hours because it's a 30 knot tailwind and I can get 160, 170K done in that time.
You must love those days.
Absolutely love them. That's when you feel you're making progress. Yeah. So in the Gulf of Carpentaria, which is an 800-kilometre stretch at the top of the country, I was going 2 kilometres an hour in one section because of the headwinds.
Yeah.
In the Bight, I was going 27K an hour at one stage. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
So Mother Nature dictated everything, and this is where this adaptability came in, because the forecasts are only ever so right. So you had to go, yes, it says a certain thing, but most likely that will change.
Where was the worst to paddle around the country? Well, I shouldn't say worst, struggle.
Totally. For different reasons, different places. So the Great Australian Bight was freezing cold.
Was it really?
I'll never forget how cold I felt the whole time. Again,
how cold?
3 degrees ambient, 10 in the water. So 10 degrees in the water is very, very cold. And all I packed that was warm enough was this 4-3 mil wetsuit that I had to change into that was wet. So each time I put a wet wetsuit on because nothing else was thick enough, that was awful. In saying that, there's no crocodiles in the Bight. So you come to the top of exactly WA, it's beautiful, it's mild, it's dead flat, but you're coming into croc territory. The water's brown, there's floating logs.
Can't see anything.
You can't see anything. It's terrifying. You get to the Gulf of Carpentaria, it's probably too choppy for the crocodiles to attack you, but you're paddling into headwinds, you know. So every stretch of coast for different reasons was challenging. I feel like New South Wales was like the honeymoon period. There was just, yes, there were sharks, but I loved it. I was surrounded by dolphins. There were turtles, like the best stretch.
What was your favourite time of the day?
Afternoon over in WA, sun setting over the ocean, Ningaloo Reef, the most incredible. And I remember turning Ningaloo Reef near Exmouth. If people haven't done Western Australia, honestly get over there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, give it a crack.
White sand, the clearest water you can see down to the reef. There's whale sharks, for God's sake. And it would look like the sky had been painted. And I remember saying, I was like, it's like someone's grabbed a paintbrush and just painted this like amazing WA. You found yourself in those moments of gratitude? Yes. And you found more strength from gratitude? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's sort of a few key lessons when I talk to these kids or corporates or whoever it might be. And one of them is that gratitude strengthening. And there's always something we can be grateful for, even when it seems like everything's going wrong. If it's your team, if it's your loved ones, if it's looking at the sky and going, that's incredible. How lucky are we? And often that gratitude I drew on from Mother Nature, which, as I said, I've been connected to the ocean from such a young age. I didn't have to look too far, or looking to my crew on the side, at the boat doing aerobics or dancing on the boat and being stupid. You draw on those things. You need to draw on something when you're paddling that far. We've just gone through a challenge, 30 days, gratitude 3 times a day for 3 things that you've got to say to yourself. A mate of mine's son was just in hospital and he said something just not so deep, but he goes, a sick man just wants, a healthy man just wants 1,000 things, but a sick man just wants one thing. Yeah, absolutely. And it's those moments, right? It's the gratitude that really go. And I think we live in such a world where it can be so materialistic and built on, perception that'll make you happy, but it's actually not, right? Totally. Just going back to your days of paddling, the person you set off to be, the person that you were, and then the Bonnie that touched back on land. Yeah. What changed? Different person. You probably had that question hundreds of times. I started this paddle for very selfish reasons. I wanted to break a world record, basically. Make a name for yourself. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Get that big win, I'd always wanted. And really, it was that Great Australian Bight where I had to become selfless, where I saw the team struggling, where I had to have one-on-one conversations with the people, even though I'd paddled 150 kilometres. And the person who came back, the young woman, was a leader. I'd never had to lead in my life. As athletes, we're very good at listening to instructions from our coaches and doing what we're told. I had to coach myself. I had to make decisions for myself. I had to stand up for myself. I wouldn't say run-ins, but a few times I had to question what the skipper was saying in a respectful way, and we had that mutual respect. I did that because it was often to keep us safe or me safe or to keep the project going. And I always, when I talk about it in my keynotes or when I talk about it, I say we. It started off as I, and even in those interviews prior, I want to break a world record. I read this book, but it became we. And seeing the crew grow and seeing the people they were becoming inspired me. So out there in the middle of the ocean, when you've just seen a great white, you are not thinking about that world record. You're thinking about survival. And it's about getting through something together. And when you get to the other side and you're safe, or you come out of crocodile territory, whatever it might be, you look at each other and go, we did that. And we can always be proud of that. And it's just this thing, it just strengthens inside of you. And that's resilience, that brick by brick, that wall of resilience you build.
Do you find that we've lost that in many aspects with kids and people?
I think definitely. And I think that's where, to me, sport is so important or such a valuable outlet or tool to teach kids about resilience. Because in the sporting arena, what is so unique, probably the same in business and finance, is that we were talking about this, you make your own luck. You can't go out there in the ocean, on the field, and just hope to be lucky or hope that something's going to be given to you. You've got to go hunting. You've got to go after it. And sport, I love that accountability. And the harder you work, we were saying this, the luckier you get.
Oh, yeah.
That is what I love. And I think that sport is just so invaluable for that.
So, talking about the mindset, the mindset I'm really intrigued by, it is, I find that with what you went through, do you find that helped you from a monetary sense when you got back in terms of the discipline and, the goals? Like, because some people don't really like to align them both. It's like, it's just so sport driven. I don't care about money.
Yeah.
Did you find that?
Oh, absolutely. But even, to be honest, leading into it as well. So my husband and I sold our cars. I remember riding to work on a push bike, sweating under the sun, working 3 jobs, going, what on earth am I doing? So the discipline leading in to go on a shoestring budget, to sacrifice everything to
Others
make
will tell
it
you
happen.
to stop.
Oh,
go and get a job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do this.
What are you doing this project? Basically, so much doubt. And then when we got back as well, like, we'd spent everything. We didn't have cars. We didn't have anything.
What's your husband's name?
Matt.
Yeah. That sounds like a good bloke.
Absolutely. Slowly building towards, again, like being able to buy the car, being able to buy him a car, being able to pay all of the bills back. Like, we came back with nothing. So it was hustling to write this book, produce this doco, start landing those keynote gigs. And yes, we built up to it, but the work wasn't done when I got back by any means. So it was the discipline to save again. And
did anyone guide you, from a monetary sense? Like,
to some
you would have had more
degree.
people probably chapping on your door, right? People going, hey, what about this opportunity, that opportunity?
Absolutely.
And you had to look beyond the money or at some stage make sure that while the window is open for Bonnie, you need to capitalise.
Absolutely. There's some fantastic managers that I've had with the speaking that have been incredible about, like the opportunities that you take, maybe some of the things you say no to, holding your fee, knowing your worth. That's probably been the biggest lesson I've had to learn. And just, some things that you do because you love it and you want to do it and you learn from it. But
well, given that you took such a risk, that was massive. If you then kind of align it back to, say, the financial kind of sector, right? So talking about that now, do you find that you make more of a calculated decision? Okay, granted that you are getting to, a bit more mature and you need to make sure
Yes.
But would you say that you were a risk taker?
I think definitely. And I think as athletes and ocean athletes, you have to be to some degree. I'd say yes, but also knowing the limits and planning as well, I think, is important. I am planning essentially maybe to do a paddle around Antarctica. Well, I want to do a paddle around Antarctica. So with that then becomes the whole planning process again. And I feel so much wiser going into it, knowing the costs and not underestimating the costs as well, because most likely you will go over budget. You will. And that was probably the biggest lesson I learned from the Paddle of Oz. We had a budget. You always, as you know better than anyone else, you always allow for more than that if you're going to do an expedition or even a holiday or what may be that little buffer. So, yes, it's going to be fun.
I can't wait to hear. When are you thinking about doing that?
So with Antarctica, it's impossible to paddle in Antarctic from April to September. It literally freezes over. It's ridiculous.
Thankfully.
So it would probably be near the end of the year.
This year, 2025?
End of this year, hopefully end of this year. But a lot of it is to do with when you can get a boat, a skipper willing to do this crazy, expedition with a ski paddler. You fly in and sit somewhere near South America.
I was going to say, you go to South America, don't you?
Yeah, wait for the weather window to fly in. It's crazy. So I'm learning about it.
How long will that take you?
So I won't circumnavigate Antarctica. It's way too big, but I'd love to just do maybe the Guinness World Record. I think for furthest distance paddle there is 1,000 K, so it could be something like a crack at that, or
give it a crack.
Maybe another Guinness World Record.
So anyone can jump onto your social media as well?
Yeah.
And what's your social media?
It's just at Bonnie Hancock, or Facebook is Bonnie Hancock. My website, bonniehancock.com as well, is where everything is.
If you, from a monetary sense, right, so before Bonnie took off on her quest, what did you not want to confront from a financial sense?
I think it was just we only had half the money needed. We couldn't raise more than that. And it was like, it'll be fine, right? She'll be right.
All the time, mate.
Absolutely.
Happens all the time.
Right? Like it was like, we'll just figure it out. We got to WA and we ran out of money. And that was probably always going to happen. It was through COVID. Sponsors weren't just handing out money. So it was then having to go, all right, what do we do now? And then having to ask for help from sponsors. That was confronting because I was like...
Had you never had those conversations before?
No, not at all, because essentially living on the Gold Coast, you're near friends and family and all sorts of things, but in the middle of Western Australia where you're chasing a Guinness World Record and you've got to get paddling and keep moving, all that record's done. It's like, we need money now. So I was naive, I think, setting out, just thinking it would be fine.
Okay, so just to deep dive into that then. So I find, I'm very passionate about, people need to spend one day out of the 365 days a year on their finances.
Totally, yeah.
Like your body, you spoke about it before. You were doing it 6 days a week.
Yes, yeah.
Just to be an Iron Woman, right?
Yeah.
So that level of commitment and drive, and then you look at, say, well, I'm really intrigued why people don't do that with their finances.
Totally. And I think, it's so true.
Because you're going to, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, you don't know what you don't know either. They don't know how much better off they could be, or they just resign to it. I did a fantastic workshop down on the Gold Coast through this Gold Coast Business Women's Network, and they actually started teaching us about super and all these things that, as an athlete, when you have an income, it fluctuates, throughout the year. It's important to know all of this.
But it's not until you either, hit the skids.
Yeah.
Right? Until, and then go back to, the Great Australian Bride.
Yeah.
That's when you became a leader.
Yeah.
That's when you changed.
Yeah.
Well, for people out there, it's when you hit the skids.
Totally.
Right? And then you go, I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
Like 13% of the population only have 2 properties in this country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's 13 or 14 million Australians.
Mm-hmm.
And I often think to myself, everyone's into the gym and wants to look after themselves.
Yeah.
More so than what it was 20 or 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
Why do they not want to? And go back to, when you were paddling around the country.
Yeah.
What would be your opinion why people don't want to unearth that feeling? What would you put it down to? Like, I don't want to know where I spend my money.
Yeah.
I don't want to know my behaviour.
Yeah.
I don't want to confront maybe my childhood in terms of growing up and, where you were raised, because that does have a lot to do with it, by the way.
Totally. But you've got to make sacrifices too, right?
You do.
It's like why people don't exercise. Because it's a sacrifice you've got to make. Like, you might not feel like going to the gym, but the people who do go know how good they'll feel. And I think people don't know or think how much better off they would be because they don't want to make those sacrifices. So they just spend, frivolously, if that's the word, the word.
No,
I'm trying to think of.
100%.
Yeah.
They spend, they spend. I detest an attribute in humans is jealousy. I can't stand it with a passion,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So it's like, hey, Bonnie, I've been really privileged to sit with you and talk to you today because I've been so engrossed in what you've been saying. I had a list of questions here, but I don't even want to talk about them now because there's money, but because I'm feeling, but this has just been amazing, right? So it's like, how did you do it? That's what people should be asking you. How did you do it? What did you do? If any listeners are out there going, hey, there's a challenge that I want to do around Australia. How do I do it? Listen to the experts.
Yeah.
It's like with finance.
Yeah.
Listen to the experts.
Absolutely.
So, so if you want to become successful, just watch what they do.
Totally. And admit, don't be afraid to ask a question. Ask for help. You're not going to look silly, right? There are no silly questions. It's like if someone was to ask me about my area of expertise in being an athlete in surf life saving, I would never consider that silly. So start from the basics, and I think people don't want to look silly as well.
I mean, we're almost wrapping it up, but what would be your opinion going through with what you went through in that time? What would you say to people out there that don't want to confront it?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. Do your research and find the experts and ask for help, but surround yourself with an incredible team. An incredible team, like those people in your corner that have got your back, that you can say or do anything and they're never going to judge you.
And delegate.
Absolutely delegate. You need to delegate. Again, you can't do everything, and we shouldn't be able to do everything. That's not how it works. Recognize the areas you need to work on as well and get better. And as I said, for me, going into ski paddling, that was always a weakness, became a strength. So be willing to put in the work ethic and adaptability, as I say.
And education is power, right?
Absolutely it is. And these days there's no excuse why you can't get educated.
No, I totally agree with that, right? So, you've got the phone at the disposal. You can just ask. And look, I could find a Google, hey, how to become ultramarathon.
Yeah.
It will tell me, but I obviously have to take action.
Absolutely.
This is where the misconception is. And,
yes.
And I often find people go, oh, well, it's too late.
Yes.
I'm like,
yes.
oh, it's not.
No.
Not at all, right? So
absolutely.
How old was the person prior to you that did what you did?
She was about 40, I think.
No way.
Yeah, 100%.
And you were how old?
And so I was 32.
And she was 40?
Yeah. And
no
you know
way.
what? People should look at these masters athletes that are in their 80s and that sort of thing. At the surf club, there's the most incredible masters athletes in their 70s. You're never too old for anything.
Totally agree.
Whatsoever.
Now, just to wrap it up, you're a nutritionist.
Yes.
I'm getting to the age that we're obviously watching what you eat.
Yep.
Bringing it back to people that are super, super busy.
Yeah.
What would be your top 4 to 5 things to get the best out of what you put in your gob?
Totally.
To get the best out of your day.
Yeah.
To make the right decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
Right? And then to go, okay, I'm clear. I know where I want to go. I know what I want to do.
Totally. I think, first of all, have a plan at the supermarket. Don't go to the supermarket when you're starving, hungry and end up buying.
You just buy shit.
Absolutely. So, you go there with a plan if you've got to write a list or know what you're going to get at the supermarket. That leads into the next one, which is eat enough protein, because even if you're not an athlete or even you don't exercise, if you don't eat enough protein, you're going to get hungrier. So if it's, the difference in someone having just toast for breakfast to simply adding eggs to that toast.
Yeah, my wife's a big egg person at the moment.
Yes.
Are you?
Maybe coming back down in price. Yes, absolutely.
So what do you eat in the morning if you don't mind me asking?
I quite like an egg, like an omelette. You can throw some veggies, because probably the third one is also eat enough veggies. I think it's like 2% of the population eat their 5 serves of veg, 2 fruit a day. Like 2%.
That's huge.
Is that crazy?
That's tiny, isn't it?
Right?
Compared.
So you can get your veggies in snacks if you don't feel like eating a whole plate of veggies at dinner. Throw some carrot sticks, some celery, if you like avocado, or spinach into. Again, you can do an omelette and throw 3 veggies in there.
What do you eat for lunch?
Lunch, I'll normally do either like a salad with some chicken, but I'll always put some carb in there at lunch. That's probably the next one. So people who just do a salad with some meat, you're missing that carb. Well, your body is craving that carbohydrate. So again, you're going to be hungrier. If it's a little bit of rice, if it's on a wrap, if it's some corn thins, if it's some Cruskets, the difference you will notice so people often don't include protein at brekkie. They miss the carb at lunch, and then they're starving hungry after work.
That was me last night.
They eat a huge meal then, right? That's when your metabolism is at its slowest. So that's when your body will conserve the extra calories. That's normally
Don't sleep properly?
It's honestly, it's mainly when it comes to weight, etc. It'll depend on the individual, but yeah, it's just the biggest thing you see is that.
What for the listeners out there, people that consume alcohol?
Yes.
What would be your recommendation there?
We say no more than 2 standard drinks a day and at least 2 alcohol-free days a week. They don't have to be next to each other as long as it's 2 in the week. That gives your liver and your kidneys a break, most importantly, because your kidneys have to filter that waste product. Your liver is filtering it. So 2 alcohol-free days a week and no more than 2. But I understand people like to go out and have a bit of a drink. That's okay, but also hydrate. So if it's like leading in, just making sure you're hydrated, plenty of water.
Well, and the reason why I'm talking about it, right? So if you're not eating properly, you're spending a lot more money on crap.
Yeah.
Which there obviously affects your body, affects your mind. And,
yes.
Because from a finance sense and, with what you achieve, we've all got goals. I don't think, and from what I've picked up with you when we spoke off air, something tells me you won't stop, and what you're about to do to go to Antarctica is you can't stop.
Yeah,
right?
You just think big, right? It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many possibilities and the world is huge, and what more can we do to explore? Like whatever your area of passion is, it's like just push the limits.
Now to wrap it up, 3 people that you would love to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Oh, that's really a great question because that's sprung on me, which is great. I know this one is probably said the most, I reckon, in this question, but I think Barack Obama would be fascinating to have dinner with. His view, he came from such humble beginnings, totally self-made. I just find him fascinating.
Barack,
definitely. Yeah, I think that. I want to bring Michelle along as well, but I don't know that they can come as the one.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in probably a female athlete in there that I do look up to. I'm going to say Lisa Carrington. I don't know if you know her. She's the world's best kayaker. She has won more gold medals in kayaking than any male or female.
She was at the Olympics.
At the Olympics, she's the one who wins by so far.
Her and her sister?
I don't know.
No, sorry.
She might have a sister.
For anyone outside there, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Dame Lisa Carrington from New Zealand. And she is she actually sent me a video message before one of the big paddles that I did.
Oh, and nice.
I was a bit starstruck, to be honest. So definitely her. And then probably third of all, let me have a think. Maybe someone who could entertain us, I would say. So Lady Gaga. I love Lady Gaga. So she could provide the entertainment. Don't know what costume she would come in, maybe dripping in meat or God knows. So I feel like that combination would be very interesting.
I think Barack would have a good laugh.
He would. I feel like
you would have a good laugh.
I would have a good laugh. I would just sit back and admire them all and be entertained.
And the person that you admire the most, it can't be your father, your mother, anyone siblings, who would it be? And it can't be the person that you just had dinner with.
No, yeah, absolutely. You think of that, don't you? There's probably a few that come to mind. I'm just trying to think. Honestly, I think some of the people that I grew up with in Coffs Harbour, some of my first coaches, this is, and I know it would be so easy to say a well-known person, but Cheryl Neville was my first female coach that I had. There was pretty much no female coaches around at that time. She was a swim coach. Few and far between. I remember just looking up to her so much, and she was my first mentor. I'm a coach now. As I said, I've become a leader, and it's having those female mentors like that, which I just absorbed her everything about her. She was humble, but she was powerful. She was strong when she needed to be. And I think Cheryl, and I would love to tell her that actually, because I never did as a 12
Let her hear this.
and 13-year-old. Exactly.
Yeah.
And she had a pretty hard life, but she was the most incredible coach. And when she would stand on that pool, everyone would listen.
She just had that authority.
She had that aura that people had. So I hope when I coach that I can try and channel some of that.
And do you want to be known as?
Want to be known as
The day that the lights turn off?
Yeah, totally. Just someone who, I said this quote in an interview one time. I said I just wanted to give it a crack. Just someone who
I think you could say that you've
gave
done that,
it a
mate.
crack, right? A bloody crack.
Oh,
Because it's like
100%.
as I said, whatever that thing is that you want to do, just bloody go and do it. And that's part of that Aussie spirit, isn't it? It's having a go. We're the underdogs.
And
You
I
don't
think
have
that's
to
what
be.
people love about other humans, right? And
yeah.
that's why I've never been so engaged. With all due respect to other people that I've had, I haven't even spoken about money, and who cares? But you honestly, you are a gift from above.
Thank you.
We
Likewise.
just met you today.
Yes, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And we were put in touch by two people.
Yeah.
And I was looking at you this morning and I'm like, oh my God, she's a bit of a star, this chick.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, wow, for what you have achieved and a father of daughters and a house full of females and work.
Yeah.
My God, man, respect to you.
Thank you. And
Honestly, you would be such a hero to many young people, male and female.
thank you.
And being out in those moments you were just speaking about before, being out in that, the ocean and that darkness and you just not giving up. Oh, my God.
It's the Aussie
Respect to
spirit.
you, my friend.
Thank you. And likewise with your podcast, because there's so many people that would probably talk about doing a podcast, never do it. So,
Well, I think we've got about 20 episodes now.
excellent.
And I've got a few more coming along. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Such
joining
a
us.
pleasure. So good to chat.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.